If you are a principal leading a nine-figure deal in mergers and acquisitions, private equity, or commercial real estate, and your deal is stalling, even though your world-class deal team and your trusted advisors are pulling all of the right deal levers, even though you already have all the right ingredients in place for the deal to close, here's the missing piece of information that you've been searching for. The lever that closes your deal doesn't exist within the deal itself. It exists within the quantum field that is governing the deal. Now, you've probably started to notice over the last few weeks, months, maybe even years, that there's something invisible influencing the outcome of your deal. Something that is beyond financial models, terms, contracts, spreadsheets, and negotiations. Something beyond anything your deal team or your trusted advisors have been trained to recognize, measure, or optimize. And something that exists outside the visible and material dimensions of your deal. Now, maybe you've explored ideas around energy, frequency, vibration, or manifestation, but you've never found a framework that can apply those principles and laws into a practical process for moving a live 9 or 10-figure deal across the finish line. And so that is exactly what I'm about to show you through the quantum deal field framework. This is a 4-lever system that I designed specifically to help principals shift the energy field that is governing the deal to accelerate completion. It was by shifting the quantum deal field that a private client of mine was able to attract an incredibly aligned strategic buyer for a $300 million hotel M&A deal and have it closed within around 6 months. It was also by shifting the quantum deal field that a private client was able to land exclusivity on a multi-regional racing dealership contract in Dubai within the first 2 weeks of working together. It was by shifting the quantum deal field that an underperforming team at a multi-billion dollar Fortune 100 company became the number one performing team, breaking multiple sales records and generating $13 million within a year, whilst also achieving the annual revenue target within a single month. It was by shifting the quantum deal field that a private client who had a deal with Netflix that had gone dormant for months suddenly came back to life and closed within the first month of working together. And so today you are going to discover how shifting your quantum deal field is the final lever to closing your stalled 9 or 10-figure deal. And after helping entrepreneurs and deal makers create 7, 8, and 9-figure reality shifts over the last few years, what I've discovered is that deal strategy can bring the deal together, but it is a shift in the energy field of the deal that will close the deal. And so today we're going to be diving into the mechanics of applying vibrational principles to accelerate 9 and 10-figure deal closure. The first thing you're going to discover is the hidden reason why 9-figure deals stay stuck even after your deal team has pulled every lever. The second thing you're going to discover is the invisible force that is quietly orchestrating every layer of negotiation, timing, speed, and breakthrough behind every 9 and 10-figure deal. Number 3, you're going to discover why using mainstream manifestation techniques in a $100 million plus deal is actually creating deal stall reality loops without you even realizing it. And number 4, you're going to discover the 4 quantum field deal levers that can turn a dormant, stalled, or almost there deal into a closed deal. Now, before we begin, if you are a principal leading a 9 or 10-figure deal right now, you may start to notice that as you go through this transmission, you start to uncover the invisible variables that have been keeping $100 to $1 billion plus of unrealized value locked inside your deal. And more importantly, you're going to discover exactly what needs to shift to fully unlock that. And so if any questions arise about how to apply these principles specifically to your deal in order for it to close within the next 3 to 12 months, this is exactly what I do privately. And so feel free to send me a message on WhatsApp with any questions that you have, and we can explore that together. My WhatsApp username is @billion-dollar-frequency. And so why is it that pulling traditional deal levers won't move the deal forward? Right now, the loop that you may be in is that the deal stalls. You pull a lever, progress appears temporarily, and then an obstacle appears, and then you pull another lever, and then more progress appears temporarily, and then another obstacle appears. And so the deal is stuck in this place where it is not closing, even though all the right ingredients are in place. Now, at some point, you may have felt like there's some invisible force that is influencing your deal that feels like it's out of your control, right? Sir Isaac Newton said, "I've explained the motions of the heavenly bodies, but not the force that moves them." And so right now, you've mastered the mechanics of deal making. But since there's something deeper, a greater force that could be moving this deal. And so what is the force that moves deals? Well, what I found is that the invisible force that moves deals is frequency. And you may be thinking, what is frequency? Well, frequency is the gravitational field of a deal. It is the organizing force that influences how all layers of the deal arrange. It's sort of like how gravity is the thing that is keeping the solar system together. And so every deal team tries to optimize the different levers in the deal. What we do is we optimize the field that is governing the deal. And while every deal team tries to move the planets that represent the different levers, trying to move the deal to close by force or by strategy, we shift the gravity that is moving the planets. And so that is what you're going to discover today. Now, you may be thinking, okay, that makes sense conceptually, but what about the counterparties? You may be thinking, I can't control the other counterparties. The deal is waiting on them, not me. And so, on some level, you may believe that the deal will close when the counterparties shift. Now, here's the truth that I've found: the deal will close when you shift. And let me explain why. Imagine your counterparties, the different layers of the deal, are like iron filings. These are your counterparties. Now, let's introduce an electromagnetic field to these iron filings. What happens to the iron filings? They begin to rearrange automatically. And so, when you shift, everything in the deal shifts, including the counterparties. And so when you scatter iron filings randomly across the table and place a magnet underneath, the filings begin to reorganize because they begin responding to an invisible field. Now, counterparties are like filings. Capital is like filings. Negotiations are the filings. And your frequency as a principal is the magnetic field that is organizing everything. And so when you shift the magnetic field, everything in the deal naturally rearranges based on that new magnetic field. So how do you shift the counterparties? By shifting the quantum deal field. Now, why is the quantum deal field the master lever for deal closure? It was Archimedes that said, "Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world." Shifting the quantum deal field is the lever that can move what is happening in the world of your deal. And the reason why your deal hasn't closed is because your current levers don't have enough power, don't have enough strength, and don't have enough length to be able to shift the world in your deal. And that is because every deal is governed by two laws: visible material laws and invisible spiritual laws. And so you've been pulling all the levers in the visible material realm by force, when the highest leverage point in closing your deal exists within the frequency of the deal. And so the visible is a reflection of the invisible, which means the final lever to closing your deal happens in the invisible dimension of the deal. Now you may be thinking, okay, what does that look like? Well, there are two sides of the deal. There is the visible deal field. That is everything that is happening in your current deal. Now, there is also the invisible deal field, the core of that deal field being the vibration, frequency, and energy that the principal is operating from. Now, the visible deal field is a reflection of the invisible deal field. And so what that means is that everything that is happening within the visible deal field is in one way, shape, or form a direct derivative of the principal's energy field. And so when you put these things together, you have the visible deal field and the invisible deal field, you get the quantum deal field of the deal. Now, where is the highest leverage point here? Well, because what is happening in the visible deal field is a derivative of the principal's frequency, the highest leverage point is the principal's frequency. And so what does this look like? The principal's frequency is deciding how all these different layers in the deal are arranging. Now, let's go even deeper into this. In the visible deal field, the deal is stalled. What that means is, in the invisible deal field, you are in a frequency that is reflected in the form of deal stall. And what does that mean? Over the last few weeks, months, or years, you have been vibrating in a certain frequency, and that is reflected in the visible deal field as deal stall. And right now, you staying in your current frequency is leaving 9 or 10 figures on the line. And so how do you shift that? Well, it's first realizing that if you want deal closure in the visible deal field of your deal, it's recognizing that that is a reflection of being in a certain frequency. And so the shift is simple. You shift your default frequency into a frequency that is fully in harmony and aligned with deal closure. And as you shift your frequency, that new frequency begins to reflect within the visible deal field. And it is through that shift that you are able to unlock 9 or 10 figures in return. And so shifting your frequency to be aligned with deal closure is one of the decisions that you will make in life that has one of the greatest returns. Now, you may be wondering, how do you do that? Well, there are 4 levers to shifting your frequency that allow 9 and 10 figure deal fields to move to completion. Now, there's something very important that I want you to know. There is frequency as the masses know it, and there is frequency for closing $100 million to $1 billion plus deals. Now, the old code, the old paradigm is that if you meditate, if you visualize, if you affirm, if you pray, if you think, you believe, you act as if, or you feel as if the deal has already closed, then you've shifted frequency, and therefore it'll manifest at some point, question mark, right? And the error behind this, the reason why it doesn't work, is because mainstream manifestation techniques only create a partial frequency match or a partial frequency shift. And so when you're using manifestation techniques that only create a partial frequency match, you get a half-baked deal. A half-baked partial frequency reflects as a half-baked partial deal. And so the cost of incomplete partial alignment is incomplete deals. And what most principals don't know is that at the multi-million and multi-billion dollar level, these millimeter misalignments in vibration and frequency reflect as multi-million or multi-billion dollar deal stalls. Now, there's a reason behind this. It's because 100% of the mainstream manifestation methodologies out there are mind and mental based. Secondly, they were designed for the masses and not designed for principals and deal makers in a live 9 or 10 figure transaction. And that is why my clients do things very differently. We don't shift the mind, we shift energy fields. Now, where is the core of your energy field? Well, the core of your energy field is your heart. And according to research by the Heart Math Institute, the heart generates a magnetic field that is 5,000 times stronger than the brain's. And so you could compare that to the subconscious mind as a water droplet, and the heart being a waterfall, thought being a bicycle, and energy fields being a Ferrari, mainstream manifestation as super old antennas, and shifting the quantum deal field as a military grade NASA antenna. And so if you had the choice, what sort of lever would you use to create 9 and 10 figure outcomes? Would you use the levers that everybody else is using, or would you use a lever that has 5,000 times more power? Now, if you pick the second option, that's exactly what you're about to learn. And so most manifestation techniques are like household antennas. There's lots of static, and the signal drops in and out based on external conditions. Deal closure requires full and steady signal lock, regardless of external conditions. And so what happens when you achieve full signal lock? Well, when you go into that new frequency and become laser focused, what ends up happening is the visible deal field begins to rearrange based on that new frequency. Now, if you're using mainstream manifestation techniques that only give you partial alignment and don't even give you full access to that higher frequency, in other words, you can enter it sometimes, but not consistently, that reflection in the visible deal field cannot happen. And so how do we do this? We do this through the 4 levers. Now, the old paradigm or code suggests that frequency is just this intangible, mystical feeling or vibrational state of belief. In other words, it is this intangible, single-layered thing that we can't really put our finger on. What I teach my clients is that frequency is made up of 4 layers that influence deal completion. Sort of think about it like a combination lock. Now, most people think frequency is one number. In actuality, it's a 4-digit combination. You can get 3 right and the vault stays closed. You get all 4 aligned and everything opens. And so imagine standing in front of a vault that contains $500 million in assets. Right? The vault doesn't open because you have 1 correct number. In other words, partial alignment. It doesn't open because you have 75% of the numbers right. And it doesn't open because you visualized it opening. It opens because every single pin inside the lock is fully aligned. And if you have 1 pin out of place, the entire vault stays locked. And so frequency works the same way. Most people think that frequency is one thing, but it's actually a 4-layer combination. And when all 4 are calibrated, the vault fully unlocks and you gain access to the $500 million in assets on the other side. And so what are the 4 frequency levers for deal closure? These are what we call quantum deal field levers. There are only 4 levers: the directional lever, the momentum lever, the speed lever, and the final closing lever. Now, behind these levers are clarity, clearing, calibration, and integration. And so clarity decides direction, clearing minimizes deal drag and delay and increases momentum, calibration increases speed, and integration allows for full completion. And so let's go into this in a bit more depth. The direction lever. The direction lever is frequency clarity. That is knowing the exact frequency that creates deal closure. And this is the lever that decides whether the deal stays stalled or moves forward, the direction of the deal. When you have an unclear frequency, you are creating a deal stall reality feedback loop. When you have a clear frequency, you are creating a deal completion reality loop. And so an unclear frequency equals a deal stall reality loop. What does that look like? Well, in the visible field, the deal is stalled. And so you react based off that circumstance. And so now you're in a frequency that matches deal stall. And because you are in that frequency, that in turn creates more deal stall, and the cycle happens again. The deal stalls, you react, you are now in a frequency that matches deal stall, and then the visible field reflects that once again. And one of the biggest risks when you are in a deal stall loop that is caused by you being in a frequency that matches what is happening in the deal is that every action, every optimization, every negotiation leads to the same outcome because the visible deal field is simply reflecting the invisible deal field. And so when you're in this state, everything that you're doing gets filtered through the frequency that you're operating from. What that means is that a stalled deal field or a stalled frequency, no matter the actions, negotiations, or optimizations, a stalled deal field produces stalled outcomes. You cannot get different outcomes by pulling deal levers from a stalled deal field. You get different outcomes by changing the deal field first. It's sort of like this. You cannot receive a different broadcast without changing into a different frequency. You can't experience a different reality in the deal while remaining on the same frequency. And so when the frequency changes, the deal changes. And so when you are clear on the frequency you need to be in to create deal completion, you start to enter a deal completion reality loop. And what does this look like? It means identifying exactly what frequency you need to be in that would allow the visible deal field to reflect a closed deal. And by entering that frequency, you begin to create a reality loop that is based off that frequency. Now, most people think that this frequency is staying in the feeling of the deal closed, visualizing the deal has closed, affirming the deal has closed, imagine acting as if the deal has closed. But in actuality, it isn't that. And even if it was, if you tried using these techniques to access that frequency, you would only gain partial access and become a partial match to that frequency. And so one of the very first things that I do with my clients is help them map out what is the exact frequency that they need to enter for the visible deal field to reflect deal closure. Now, what's an example of this? Well, one of our clients had a dormant Netflix entertainment deal that got resurrected. She thought the deal was dead. Netflix had gone cold for months and stopped responding. And within 2 weeks of gaining frequency clarity and reaching full calibration, which we'll go into what that means in a moment, the counterparty reached back out and signed the deal. And so if we're to reflect on this, you can ask yourself a couple questions. Are you currently in a deal stall loop or a deal closed loop? What frequency have you been in to create that? And right now, how clear are you on the frequency you need to be in to close the deal? Now, let's get into the momentum lever. Clearing. This is the measurement of how much vibrational resistance you have to the selected frequency that correlates with deal closure. This lever decides the amount of setbacks and delays that happen on the way to deal closure. And so if you have a lot of resistance, there's lots of delays and setbacks. If you have little to no resistance, the deal moves forward smoothly and cleanly. Now, what does this look like? What I've found is that when a client is going into a new frequency after we've mapped out what that frequency is, there is resistance within them, things within them that pull them back to the current or the old frequency. Now, I call these vibrational anchor points, and they are responsible for creating delays and setbacks. And so what that means is that vibrational resistance creates deal delays. And we can think about it like this. The higher the vibrational resistance is, the more setbacks and delays there are. And so if your vibrational resistance right now is in the 70 to 90%, you're probably experiencing a lot of setbacks. If it's in the 20 to 60%, maybe you're experiencing occasional delays. But if it's in the 0 to 5% resistance level, you're probably not experiencing that many delays and setbacks. And so really the key is to decrease the amount of vibrational resistance within your energy field as the principle to minimize the amount of delays. And so when vibrational resistance decreases, deal flow, smoothness, ease, momentum increases. And so right now, how much vibrational resistance is there present within your deal? How much vibrational resistance is there present within you? Are you aware of what in you keeps pulling you to your current frequency? And what is at risk if you stay in your current frequency, unable to go into a new one? Now, let's go over the speed lever. The speed lever is frequency calibration. This is the percentage degree to which your energy field is a match to the selected frequency that correlates with deal closure. Now, this lever decides the speed at which your deal moves forward. When you are in a low calibrated state, there's little or no movement, or you have a very slow moving deal. When you're in a high calibration state, the deal is moving very fast and quickly to completion. And so think about calibration like gears. When you're in a lower gear, you're in a lower speed. When you're in a higher gear, you're in a higher speed. And there are 4 levels of calibration. We have low calibration, mid calibration, high calibration, and max calibration. And on the diagram on the right, you can see that low calibration is anywhere between 5 to 25% vibrational match. Mid calibration is anywhere between 30 to 50% vibrational match. High calibration is anywhere between 50 to 75, and max calibration is 100% plus. Now, the key to deal closure is to become a full vibrational match to that specific frequency. And there's something magical that happens when you do that. We had a client who'd been envisioning a deal for over 2 years, but none of the manifestation techniques he was using were working. After we got clear on the frequency and reached 100% calibration, a highly aligned strategic buyer appeared offering a $300 million deal. Now, it was by holding 100% calibration through the different pivot points in the deal, that deal closed and transacted in around 6 months. And so as calibration increases, speed increases. Now, there are 4 quantum deal field states. We have a dormant deal, oscillating deal, converging deal, and a completed deal. Now, a dormant deal field is when the deal is not moving. This means you are in a 0 to 30% calibration level. Now, if you're in an oscillating deal field, that means the deal is moving, but it's constantly moving back and forth, not really forward. That means your calibration is somewhere in the 30 to 60% level. You also have a converging deal field when all the right pieces are in place, but the deal is always stuck right by the finish line at almost there. That means your calibration is anywhere between 60 to 90%. Now, what is calibration? It is the degree to which your energy field is a match to the frequency that correlates with deal closure. And we have the final level of calibration, which is what we recently talked about with that $300 million deal. We call this the completed deal field. That means the deal has closed and transacted smoothly. And that is something that happens when your calibration is 100% plus. Now, I've put on the screen here 200% as well. The reason I put that on there is because we have certain practices that we give our clients that after they become 100% match, we show them how to amplify that specific frequency within the energy field. And so if we were to reflect on this, based off the speed at which your deal is moving at the moment, what calibration level might you be at? Out of the 4 different levels of a quantum deal field, which one is your deal functioning from at the moment? And what might be the risk for you if your calibration stays the same? And so let's dive into the final closing lever. We call this frequency integration. Frequency integration measures your ability to sustain 100% plus calibration on a day-to-day basis. What that means is that higher frequency, the frequency that correlates with deal closure, has become your default energetic state, regardless of external situations in the deal. And so when your ability to sustain high calibration is low, there's lots of deal stall, lots of delay, lots of almost there's. When you're able to sustain full calibration at 100% plus and make that your default frequency, the deal closes and transacts smoothly. And I'll explain why. As we said before, deal closure requires full and steady signal lock, regardless of external situations. Where you may be at right now is instead of a full signal lock, it's more of a roller coaster because your frequency is constantly being decided by the different things that are happening or not happening in the deal. And so when you're in a state of reactive awareness or consciousness, your frequency becomes a roller coaster, constantly going up and down between different calibration levels, which reflects as a roller coaster deal. And so this is what that looks like. Your calibration is moving in between all the different levels of a quantum deal field. And because you may be using traditional manifestation techniques, you're never really able to get to the 100% plus calibration levels. And so what does this look like? Something optimal happens in the deal. And so your calibration level goes up. And then something not so optimal happens in the deal and your calibration goes down. And then your calibration goes up again after the good news lands. And then minor setback or delay, your calibration drops again. What ends up happening is your frequency calibration is staying within the stall zone, the dormant deal zone, the oscillating deal zone, and the converging deal zone. This is what we call the stall zone. And when your calibration is stuck within the stall zone, what ends up happening is the events and circumstances, or the iron filings, the counterparties and the different layers of the deal, arrange based off that level of calibration. And so you're creating a deal stall loop within the stall zone calibration level and leaving 9 or 10 figures in unrealized value. And so what does integration really look like? It means sustaining the selected frequency that correlates with deal closure at 100% plus, full calibration, despite external conditions. What that means is the selected frequency has become your default day-to-day energetic state. And what that does is it allows the gravity in the deal to fully align to completion. And so think about it like this. Instead of a roller coaster, you are now a bullet train. What that means is that you are in a fully calibrated state unconditionally. And it's through that state that the deal, just like this bullet train, begins to glide to completion. Now, what does that look like? Because you're holding max calibration at 100 to 200% plus, the different circumstances in the deal start to gravitate towards that level. Now, remember at the beginning when we said we shift the gravity that moves the deal? Remember at the beginning when we talked about the iron filings and the different deal layers and how when you shift the energy field, everything starts to rearrange. That's exactly what starts to happen in your deal. Even though there may be delays, even though there may be setbacks, all of those different events in the deal are moving, are arranging towards full completion because that is the magnetic field that you're holding in the invisible side of the deal. And so the external side of the deal begins to mirror that. And so this is what that looks like. When you sustain full calibration with your energy field, you begin to create that deal completion reality loop. And so let's reflect on this. Right now, on a scale of 1 to 100, how well are you able to sustain full calibration on a day-to-day basis? Are you able to sustain that unconditionally, or are you slipping in and out constantly? Is your state being decided by external situations, or is your state being decided by you? And what is the impact of that on whether your deal closes or not? And so let's do a quick recap and a client exercise that'll help with this. So far, you've discovered the hidden reason why 9 and 10-figure deals stay stuck even after your deal team has pulled every lever. You've discovered the invisible force that is quietly orchestrating every layer of negotiation, timing, speed, and momentum within your deal. You've also discovered why mainstream manifestation techniques are actually creating deal delays and deal stall reality loops without even realizing it. And you've discovered the different frequency levers that can turn a dormant, stalled, or almost there deal into a closed deal. Now, let's put this into practice using a client exercise that we call the quantum deal map, so that you can know exactly what needs to shift to unlock your 9 or 10-figure deal. So get your notepad out, and I want you to draw 4 circles, just like this one. We have the direction lever, which is frequency clarity. We have the speed lever, which is calibration. We have the momentum lever, which is clearing and vibrational resistance. And we have the final closing lever, which is frequency integration. And all we're going to do is you're going to put a green, a yellow, or a red next to each one as we evaluate the different layers of your quantum deal field. And so let's go over the direction lever, frequency clarity. On a scale of 1 to 100, 100 being you are ultra crystal clear on the exact frequency you need to be in that would reflect in deal closure, and 0 being you have no idea what frequency you need to be in to unlock that. Write down the exact percentage that you intuitively feel that you are. And if you're well below 30, you can put a red. If you're somewhere between 30 and maybe 80, you can put a yellow. And if you're 90% plus, you can put a green. Now, let's go over the momentum lever, clearing vibrational resistance, which minimizes delay and increases momentum. And so right now, on a scale of 1 to 100, how much internal resistance do you have to entering that higher frequency? How much vibrational resistance do you feel there is when it comes to closing this deal? And once you've written that number down, you can also give yourself a color. If you feel like there is 0 resistance in your deal and everything is moving smoothly, you can give yourself a green. If you feel like there is minor delays and it's sort of stuck at almost there all the time, you can maybe give yourself a yellow. And if your deal has completely stalled, it is just not moving, you can give yourself a red. Now, let's go over the speed lever. On a scale of 1 to 100, you can give yourself a rating on your calibration level based on the 4 different types of quantum deal fields. Are you in a dormant deal field? In that case, you can give yourself a red. Are you in a oscillating deal field or a converging deal field? In that case, you can give yourself a yellow. Or are you in a completed deal field at 100% vibrational match? You can give yourself a green. And let's go over the final closing lever. This is frequency integration. And there's one simple question you can ask yourself. If you were to rate yourself on a scale of 1 being you're unable to sustain full calibration on a day-to-day state, and 100 being you are fully able to hold that frequency regardless of what is happening at full calibration. And if you're unable to sustain that, or you just don't know how, you can give yourself a red. You can give yourself a yellow if you can sometimes stay in that frequency, but not all the time. And you can give yourself a green if you have no issues being in that frequency, regardless of what is happening in the deal. And so the next step is to send me a summary of your percentages and colors and any questions you may have through my WhatsApp business. Now, if you've gone through this exercise, your quantum deal levers may look something like this. You may have 1 green, 2 yellows, and 1 red. Or maybe you have more reds and no greens and 1 yellow. For most of my clients, before they start working with me, this is what it looks like. They're sort of unclear on what frequency they need to be in, or they don't know how to access that frequency. They have slight vibrational resistance within them because this is a huge deal, maybe one of the biggest deals they've ever worked on. And obviously, when this deal closes, that leads to a different identity, a whole different level of net worth as well. And so they have some internal resistance that is reflecting as deal delay. They're partially calibrated. And the calibration is usually somewhere in the 30 to 70 zone, which means their deal is almost there and somewhat oscillating. And when it comes to holding that frequency throughout the different pivot points in the deal, they are unable to do that. And so what does it look like when you shift all the different levers to create deal closure? Well, it looks like this. You're fully clear on the frequency you need to be in to create deal closure, which then allows you to start creating a deal closure reality loop. You have dissolved and released all the different layers of resistance within your energy field, which means that there is very little drag or delay within your deal and momentum is strong. You're able to become a full vibrational match to the specific frequency that correlates with deal closure, a frequency that is completely bespoke and personal to you. And so your deal is moving quite fast towards the finish line. And then you're also holding that full calibration, which leads to a smooth completion. Now, you could totally try and do this on your own and figure this out on your own. But while you're figuring that out, your deal is staying exactly where it is, while over 9 or 10 figures in unrealized value remains locked up. And so if you're leading a 9 or 10 figure deal right now, you probably already know that time is the greatest asset we have in this life. And so what if I help you go through this process 3, 6, 9, maybe even 12 months faster? What would accelerating your deal by 3 to 12 months be worth to you personally on top of unlocking 9 or 10 figures in value? And what if you had the same exact level of support that my clients had? And so if you'd like to go the fastest route, let's shift your quantum deal field together. Right now, I have 3 VIP client spaces open. And so I am looking for 3 principals who are leading 9 or 10 figure deals and are ready to close and transact within the next 3 to 12 months. This is for you if your deal is stalling, oscillating, or stuck at almost there despite having all the right pieces in place and pulling all the right levers. And together, what we'll do is we'll align the different layers of the energy field that is governing your deal with the different levers that we covered in this transmission so that your deal can close within the next 3 to 12 months, depending on what stage of the deal you're currently at. And so if you feel like this is exactly what you've been searching for, simply send me the word deal on my WhatsApp business to apply, and I'll guide you through the next steps. My username on WhatsApp business is @BillionDollarFrequency. So feel free to send me a message there, and we'll talk soon.